HOA Karen called 911. When I started fishing, cop who showed up was my former Army lieutenant. When she called 911 over a fishing pole, I thought it was just another one of her power plays. But the moment the police car pulled up and I saw who stepped out, my heart stopped, because the cop walking toward me was someone I never expected to see again, my old Army lieutenant. And that changed everything. All right, let me rewind. It all started a few weeks ago, when the weather finally began to warm up and I decided to take a quiet afternoon off. I live in a lakeside neighborhood, the kind of place that looks peaceful on the surface but is run by an HOA that takes itself way too seriously. Our enforcer, Karen, is a woman in her 50s with perfectly styled blonde hair and a pink suit that looks like it was made to command attention. She is the self-appointed guardian of every blade of grass and every rule written in that thick HOA handbook. I usually keep my distance, but that afternoon I grabbed my fishing rod, walked down to the edge of my own backyard, and cast a line into the lake. Simple, harmless, peaceful. Within 10 minutes, I heard heels clicking behind me. "Excuse me!" I did not even have to turn around to know who it was. Karen's voice carries the same authority as a siren, loud, sharp, and impossible to ignore. I turned around slowly, already bracing myself. "You cannot fish here," she snapped, crossing her arms. "This lake is protected under HOA property rules, Section 8, Subsection 4. I smiled politely. "Actually, Karen, that rule applies to the community dock. This is my backyard, and I happen to own this stretch of land. The property line extends 3 feet into the lake." Her eyes narrowed. "No, that cannot be right. The HOA owns the lake." I pulled out my phone and opened the property app where I had the survey maps saved. "See this line here? It says otherwise." She leaned in, squinting. Then she frowned, clearly not used to being challenged. "I will have to verify this," she said, stepping back. "Until then, you are violating community policy." I shrugged. "You can verify all you want. I'm not doing anything illegal." That answer did not sit well with her. She spun on her heel, muttering something about troublemakers, and stormed back toward her house. I figured that was the end of it. But about 15 minutes later, I heard the distant sound of a siren. At first, I thought it was just passing by the main road. But then the flashing lights appeared right at the edge of the cul-de-sac, heading straight for me. You have got to be kidding me. Karen stood near her driveway with her arms crossed, and that smug little smirk that only people who love authority get when they think they are about to win. The police car stopped right beside her. She pointed dramatically in my direction, like I was some kind of criminal. "He's trespassing on HOA property," she declared. "Refused to comply with our community's safety rules." I could feel the adrenaline kicking in. I took a deep breath, set my fishing rod down, and raised my hands slightly. Not out of guilt, just to keep things calm. The car door opened, and the officer who stepped out made me freeze. Tall, broad-shouldered, same steady eyes I remembered from years ago. It took a second, but then recognition hit me. "Lieutenant Hayes?" I said quietly. He looked at me, confused for a moment. Then his expression softened. "Private Miller?" he asked, disbelief mixing with a smile. "I'll be damned." Karen blinked, clearly thrown off. "Wait, you two know each other?" I could not help but grin. "Served together in the Army. He was my commanding officer." The tension in the air shifted immediately. Hayes stepped closer, nodding to me with that old sense of calm leadership. "Mind telling me what's going on here?" he asked, but his tone was more curious than confrontational. Karen jumped in before I could answer. "This man is fishing illegally. He's breaking HOA regulations. I told him to stop, but he refused." Hayes raised an eyebrow. "Fishing illegally? In his own backyard?" Karen crossed her arms again. "The HOA owns the lake. It's in the bylaws." I pulled my phone out once more, opened the same map, and handed it over. "Actually, the property survey says otherwise. I own this dock and part of the shoreline." Hayes studied it for a moment. I could see the faintest hint of amusement tugging at his mouth. Then he turned to Karen. Ma'am, based on this document, he's perfectly within his rights to fish here. Karen's jaw dropped. That cannot be. We have community rules. Hayes shrugged calmly. Community rules don't override property law, ma'am. I tried not to smile too wide, but Karen saw it, and her face turned red. Unbelievable, she muttered. This is harassment. You will be hearing from the HOA board about this. She stormed off toward her house again, muttering about respect and lawless residents. Hayes turned back to me with a chuckle. You still have that same calm patience, I remember. Guess it came in handy today. I laughed. Yeah, though I did not think I'd need it for fishing in my own yard. He looked around the lake, hands on his hips. Beautiful place. Shame about the management. We both laughed at that, but I could not shake the feeling that this was not over, because with Karen, it never is. She does not take embarrassment well. And after today, I had a feeling she would find a new way to make my life miserable. After that day by the lake, things around the neighborhood got weird. Karen stopped waving at neighbors. She started holding emergency HOA meetings every other evening, lights flickering in her living room late into the night. And though she avoided me in person, I could tell she was planning something. At first, I brushed it off. I figured maybe she was just embarrassed that her 911 stunt backfired, but by the end of that week, I realized I had underestimated her. It began with an email. Subject line, HOA compliance notice. Property review pending. I opened it and nearly laughed. It claimed that my dock extension was not compliant with HOA design standards and needed to be reviewed by the board. The dock extension they were referring to was the same dock that had been there since I bought the house. I knew exactly what this was. Retaliation. Still, I tried to play it smart. I gathered the paperwork, the survey maps, the photos from the previous owner, even a copy of the builder's inspection. Then, I replied politely, attaching everything. No response. The next day, I got another email, this time with a $250 administrative review fee. That one made my blood boil. So I decided to go to the source. Karen's house looked like it belonged in a magazine. Every flower perfectly trimmed, an American flag hanging perfectly centered, and a camera above the door that tracked you as you walked up. When she opened the door, she was all fake smiles. Oh, it's you, she said sweetly. Come about your illegal dock? It's not illegal, I said calmly. You've got my documents. You know it's grandfathered in. Her smile faded. Well, the board disagrees. Then the board's wrong. Her expression hardened. You really think you can talk to me like that? After wasting police time with your little fishing stunt? That one caught me off guard. You called 911 on me. She leaned closer. You embarrassed me in front of an officer, in front of my neighbors. That kind of disrespect doesn't go away easily. There it was, the real reason. I took a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Karen, you're crossing a line. You know this is harassment. Harassment, she repeated, pretending to be offended. Oh no, honey. This is compliance. I turned and walked away before I said something I would regret. But as I reached my driveway, I noticed something new. A small HOA notice posted on the mailbox. Property inspection scheduled. Things escalated fast after that. For the next week, random inspectors started showing up, snapping photos of my lawn, my siding, even my car parked in the driveway. One of them even lifted my trash can lid, like they were searching for some violation that would stick. Neighbors began whispering. Some avoided eye contact, others just gave me sympathetic looks. Everyone knew how Karen operated, but no one dared to stand up to her. Until one afternoon, someone did. I was outside mowing my lawn when I heard a familiar voice call my name. It was Lieutenant Hayes. He was off duty, wearing a casual shirt and jeans, but that same calm confidence never left him. Mind if I stop by? He asked. Please, I said, killing the mower. I could use a break. He glanced around the yard, then toward Karen's house, where the blinds moved just slightly. You weren't kidding. She's watching you like a hawk. She's been trying to bury me in fake violations, I said. Every day it's something new. I'm starting to think she's using HOA funds for personal payback. Hayes crossed his arms. You think she's misusing money? I nodded. The board fees, the so-called inspections, none of it adds up. And that $250 administrative fee? It went to a private PayPal account, not the HOA treasury. That caught his attention. Got proof? I handed him a printed screenshot from my email. He scanned it, then whistled low. That's shady. He looked up at me with that same steady seriousness he used to have when giving orders in the field. If you want this to stop, you'll need to go by the book. Document everything. Dates, times, photos, messages, all of it. If she's abusing her position, there'll be a trail. I nodded slowly. Guess it's time to start an audit. He smiled slightly. Now you're thinking like a soldier. That night, I set up a folder on my laptop labeled HOA evidence. Every notice, every fine, every interaction, I logged it all. I even installed a small camera near my dock, just in case someone decided to inspect it again. 3 days later, that camera caught exactly what I feared. At 11:47 p.m., a figure in a pink suit, yes, Karen herself, was walking along my dock with a flashlight, snapping photos. She wasn't inspecting anything. She was snooping. The next morning, I confronted her again, this time with the footage ready on my phone. When she opened the door, I did not bother with small talk. You were on my property last night. She laughed. Oh, please, I was doing a routine inspection. At midnight? I raised an eyebrow. Because that sounds more like trespassing. Her smile faltered for just a second before she recovered. I can inspect whenever I deem necessary. That's in my authority as HOA compliance chair. I stepped closer. You're abusing that authority, and I've got proof. She froze, just a flicker of fear behind her eyes. Proof? She asked quietly. I showed her a still image from the video, clear as day. Her face twisted with anger. You're spying on me now? Just protecting my property, I said evenly. The same way you said you were protecting the lake. She glared at me, breathing hard before slamming the door shut without another word. That was the last time she spoke to me directly. But that same afternoon, I got a certified letter from the HOA. Notice of property violation, unauthorized surveillance equipment. They were now trying to find me for the security camera. That was the moment I knew it was war. So I did what Hayes suggested. I dug deeper. And when I followed the paper trail of those fines, the payments, and the emails, I found something that made my stomach turn. Multiple transfers, all going to an account under the name KD Property Management, an account owned by Karen herself. She had been funneling HOA money straight into her own account for months. And the next HOA board meeting? It was scheduled for that weekend. Perfect timing. I printed everything out. Bank traces, screenshots, correspondence, all neatly filed in a binder. And as I looked out the window that night, across the quiet lake that started all of this, I made myself a promise. By the end of that meeting, everyone in this neighborhood would know exactly who Karen really was. Saturday morning came faster than I expected. The sun reflected off the lake like a mirror, perfectly calm, the kind of peace that makes you forget the chaos brewing underneath. But I could not forget. Inside my living room sat the evidence binder, a month's worth of late nights, receipts, screenshots, and video stills. Proof that Karen, the self-proclaimed guardian of our community standards, had been quietly draining HOA funds into her own account. It was time. When I arrived at the clubhouse, the parking lot was already full. People were standing in small clusters, murmuring. You could feel the tension before even walking in. Inside, the air was heavy, like a courtroom just before the verdict. Karen stood at the front of the room, wearing her signature pink suit, a stack of papers in her hand, and that same smug smile she always wore when she thought she was in control. Let's begin, she said sweetly, tapping the microphone. We have several items on the agenda, including unresolved violations and budget updates. I sat near the back, quietly flipping through my binder, waiting for the right moment. As she started rambling about misallocated maintenance funds and property improvements, I noticed something. Several board members were frowning. They had no idea what she was talking about. Finally, she reached the last point on her list. "And lastly," she said, glancing toward me, "we need to address the issue of unauthorized surveillance equipment and repeated noncompliance by Mr. Reed." Dozens of heads turned my way. I stood up slowly. "Actually, before we get to that, I think there is something else the board needs to see first." Karen's smile twitched. "This isn't the time for personal disputes." "Oh, it's not personal," I said, walking up to the front. "It's about where our HOA money has been going." The room went silent. I placed the binder on the table and opened it to the first page, a printed screenshot of her PayPal transaction. Then another, then another. People started whispering. "These," I said, "are payments made from HOA funds to a personal account, under the name KD Property Management. That's you, Karen." She laughed nervously. "That's absurd. Those are reimbursements for official expenses." "Reimbursements?" I flipped another page. "So the HOA reimbursed you for meeting refreshments totaling $1,200, for compliance monitoring equipment, another $3,000, and for community improvements, listed as dock removal fees?" The room erupted in murmurs. One board member leaned forward. "Dock removal? There were no approved dock removals." I nodded. "Exactly. She fabricated the expense, right after threatening to have mine torn down." Karen's smile vanished. "You don't understand how accounting works. These are routine—" I interrupted her. "Routine doesn't involve midnight inspections and secret transfers." Her voice sharpened. "You have no proof of that." I tapped my phone, projecting a still image from my dock camera onto the screen behind her, Karen herself, flashlight in hand, walking along my dock at 11:47 p.m. Gasps filled the room. Her jaw clenched. "That's taken out of context." "Sure," I said calmly. "Context being, you trespassed on private property while stealing HOA funds." The treasurer, an older gentleman named Bill, stood up. "Karen, is this true?" She hesitated, just long enough for the silence to say it all. Then came the breaking point. A woman from the audience stood up, Mrs. Porter, who lived 2 doors down. "You fined me $200 last month for a missing flower pot, and now I find out you've been pocketing our dues?" The murmurs turned to outrage. One by one, neighbors began standing up, asking questions, showing their own fines, pulling out letters. It was like a dam breaking. Karen tried to regain control. "Everyone, please, let's not jump to conclusions." But it was over. The president of the HOA, a quiet man named Leonard, finally spoke. "Karen, I'm suspending your position effective immediately pending investigation. We'll bring in an auditor first thing Monday." Karen looked stunned. "You can't do that?" Leonard looked her straight in the eye. "Actually, we can." She stood frozen for a moment, then grabbed her papers, muttered something under her breath, and stormed out of the room. The door slammed behind her with a hollow echo. The room stayed silent for a beat. Then, slowly, people started clapping. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just that slow, relieved kind of applause that happens when a weight has finally been lifted off everyone's shoulders. Leonard turned toward me. "Mr. Reed, thank you for bringing this to our attention. It takes courage to stand up like that." I nodded. "I wasn't trying to start a war. I just wanted some peace." He smiled faintly. "Well, I think you just gave us all some." As the meeting broke up, I stepped outside, breathing in the cool lake air. The water rippled softly under the dock, my dock, catching the sunlight just right. That was when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Not bad, soldier." I turned to see Lieutenant Hayes leaning against his truck with that half grin of his. "Figured you'd be here," I said. He shrugged. "Word travels fast. The chief got wind of that audit. Looks like your HOA's about to get a full investigation." I smiled for the first time in weeks. "Guess justice came quicker than expected." He gave me a firm nod. "You handled it right. With facts, not fists. Proud of you. As he drove off, I stood there for a long moment, watching the lake, feeling the quiet settle back in. For the first time in months, it actually felt like home again. And as the sun dipped lower, painting the sky orange and gold, I realized something. Sometimes the best revenge isn't shouting louder, it's letting the truth speak for itself. If you enjoyed this story, hit subscribe for more real-life HOA showdowns, where homeowners fight back with facts, not fury. Because sometimes doing the right thing is the most powerful revenge of all.